Huh?
I said, no, she's not there.
Okay. I also see Mr. Carlton Dallas, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Looks like Carlton's still connecting to audio. All right. In the meantime, we need a motion to approve the agenda. Ms. Gordon, are you interested in making such a motion?
And Chloe, you are muted.
There you go. Okay, thank you. I move that we approve the agenda.
Okay, I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous, Robin. All right, do we have any public comments?
No, ma'am.
Okay, let's see. I guess we need a motion to approve the May 23rd committee meeting minutes, which I can't get into any of the diligent stuff yet, so I'm assuming.
I emailed them to, I sent it to your email. Everything that's in diligent, I sent to you all's email in case you all weren't able to get in, but I'll put the minutes up right quick.
Yeah, I saw that. Why don't we just, if you don't mind, Ms. Gordon, why don't we just put that on the next one? I just haven't even looked at them. I'm assuming they're fine, but we can approve those at the next one.
Okay, I agree.
Mr. Campbell has joined us.
Yeah.
Greetings, Mr. Campbell. So if you don't mind, I don't know if we need to make a motion, but let's just look at that.
We'll just move on to the next one. Got it.
Okay. All right. So we are here to have a discussion of the superintendent evaluation. And I sent out an email to all the board members. I have requested more feedback from the board because when we last brought our committee recommendations to the board, there was the sense that really there's nothing we can change on the current evaluation because we would have had to have changed that prior to the school year getting underway. I personally tend to disagree with that, but that was sort of the feedback from the board. So what the point of this meeting is to basically decide what we're going to present on September 5th, our next board meeting. We had talked about at a public meeting of the board having a work session to look at the results section. We don't have a results section, and to me, that's a really critical piece. But as far as we'll kind of focus in on what we need to do, Dr. Rodriguez evaluation is due October 31st. Is that right, Robin?
Yes.
So we need to have something, and there are some things that I think are problematic that I think the rest of the board acknowledges are problematic from last year's evaluation we did it. So I guess we'll just have kind of an open discussion. And what I'm hoping to have come out of this meeting is something to present to the board. And I really think the board needs to give this committee some more direction. So with that, Ms. Gordon, do you have anything that you've thought about that you'd like to add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I attended a work session on Saturday, and one of the sessions that I did attend was about the superintendent's evaluation. When it came to the performance of the superintendent, the attorney was clear about the performance has to be based on what his contract also reflects. So I'm not sure what is in Dr. Rodriguez's contract because I hadn't looked at it. And the second thing is if we add or change anything, we need to have that conversation with Dr. Rodriguez so that he knows what we're looking at. And that really, at this point, as you brought out, we cannot add or revise anything right now because his performance is due this October. So what we can do can be for 23, 24. It can't be for the past. So looking at that guideline, and looking at the governesses of what his contract is with results, we have to be sure that we are not violating his contract.
Okay. That sounds like that was a useful work session on Saturday. That was at the school board law.
Yes, it was at the school law. So,
Mr. Campbell, oh, sorry.
No, but we also have to sit down with Dr. Rodriguez to explain what we're doing so that he has input and he understands what we're looking at for the 23-24. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Campbell, as the person who's gone through more superintendent evaluations than anybody in the state of South Carolina, what's your position?
I agree with Chloe.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Mr. Gordon because we cannot change in the midstream. I think this discussion should have happened the first of the year.
Yeah.
Until now, and I think we as a board were dragging our feet on this. So I would agree with Ms. Gordon. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any of the board members? Did Carlton Dallas ever get on?
No, I don't see him on. Okay,
so I think based on what we're talking about here, there's kind of three potential options. There is basically, I think that we have to acknowledge the pandemic response section of this instrument needs to come out.
Okay.
I mean, would you agree or disagree? Because the pandemic has not been an issue this school year.
Can you all see that on the screen?
That's the one in red, Mrs. Cushenberry?
Yes.
And Chloe, just so you understand, that was, and also for the public, that was added kind of because they basically quarantined all the data that we were initially using, all those test scores and whatnot, and some of the traditional metrics were not valid. So we added pandemic response questions to sort of try and capture what was going on. Now, there is an argument to be made that their pandemic, I don't know when it was officially ended. I think it wasn't officially ended until May of last year. Yeah. But the things that, the plan and we've got the data released now. So to me, it seems a little silly to have that in there still. What do you think, Mr. Campbell?
I think we should take it out.
Okay. And the other thing is, well, this committee wasn't formed until February, and it, we had took a little bit to get going on this. We did have that discussion in the last board meeting when it was a full board. Now, we didn't have our new board members then, but we all kind of agreed that there was a big problem with the financial piece. Because since this is based on Michigan, which does do things a little bit differently, we are not, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Rodriguez, you can't go under budget, right?
Oh, you can't. I have to present a balanced budget, right?
So that metric didn't make a lot of sense because it gave the highest score to essentially coming in under budget, which is not something that the board wants him to do, and I don't think the state wants him to do. So I think we should recalibrate that category.
Right there.
Yeah. So rather than saying, so we can present to the board, because we did have this discussion, Mr. Campbell, and we've got a lot of new board members since then, but that basically not being able to rate our finance department and the superintendent's financial performance as highly effective because he didn't come in under budget. We all kind of agreed that that was a problem.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So are you okay with that being changed so that we say ineffective is over budget 10%? I mean, who cares? Minimally effective is over budget 1 to 2, whatever. And then say that highly effective is on budget.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. The other thing that has been brought up numerous times in various board meetings and various committee meetings is the academic piece. Robin, can you find that? Okay. So in the state of Michigan, they have a very different assessment system where the teacher evaluation is based on these metrics. And then that trickles up to the principal's evaluation, which is based on the teacher, and so on and so forth. South Carolina does that a little bit differently. And so the problem is that it has created a big disparity because we're trying to essentially evaluate our superintendent's academic performance based on a system that we don't participate in. I would like to talk about the possibility, or at least present to the board, a better way to do the academic evaluation, because we've talked about this numerous times as well. What do you think, Mr. Campbell? I'm asking Mr. Campbell and Ms. Gordon just because he and I have been in some of these meetings.
No, hey, no problem. I understand.
Yes, I agree with you on that, because other district, not in South Carolina, they rate their superintendent on how the teachers do, and we cannot do that because the way it is in South Carolina, they don't do that. Now, I don't know whether that would cause a problem with the state. I think we need to get some legalish information about that.
Okay. So that we can get that together. And I think also, Dr. Rodriguez, I think this is a point where your input would be really valued. You see how other superintendents in South Carolina, obviously the pandemic is still having an impact. Can you make some recommendations or share some thoughts on this piece?
Well, I think, the challenge, as you articulated, is that in South Carolina, teachers and school administrators are not held accountable for student achievement piece, right? Because it's not part of their evaluation system. And so that's the challenge and the disparity, because the only one in the system is the person in ours would be the person who's the furthest away from the classroom, where the teaching and learning happens. So I think you articulated that very well. There are other components, in terms of, perhaps some programmatic components that could be potentially looked at. What are some of the, for example, initiatives that we're bringing into the system, like MedTech 7, like those kinds of possibilities as part of it as well. So, but I can look at what are other superintendent evaluations in the state, and I can get some samples and can share some of those that might make sense and adhere to the guidelines that you want to follow.
And Mr. Smith, I'm going to get to you in 1 second, but just to follow up on that, I think what also would be interesting to me, we need what do we, and I don't expect this to be brought out right now, but how do we evaluate our teachers? How do we evaluate our principals and build on that as well, since that's kind of a similar format. Mr. Smith, thanks for joining.
Yes, Ms. Barr, I think that you kind of hit upon what I was about to say, because I do believe that our teachers are still evaluated on that, and due to teacher performance, I believe that we are still looking at whether our teachers are performing in their classes or not, and if they're not, then the adjustments are still being made. So I would see why we would not do that at the superintendent's level. So I'm kind of coming in and listening to what was said within the last couple of minutes. I do have some concerns, but I'm going to vote with this as we move along. But I'll just say that I think everyone must be held accountable, and not just in the state of South Carolina, because I hate to compare ourselves to South Carolina, because South Carolina is one of the most failing states across the country. So I don't believe that we want to measure ourselves about South Carolina, and I do believe that there are districts and schools in South Carolina that are making strides for excellence. So therefore, when we say that, then we have to ask ourselves too, what are we really trying to accomplish here? So I mean, it's one thing to say one thing, but it's another thing for our actions to be in line with what we really want. Thank you.
Yeah, I understand. I
Ms.
think our
Boatwright?
goal. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add the point. Teacher and school-based administrator evaluations were turned in prior to the end of the year. Results from state assessments don't come in until later. So they're not a part of their evaluations. I mean, the state still hasn't released them or unembargoed them. So that's just my point, how it's not in those evaluations. It's not possible.
Well, I think the point that Mr. Smith's making, and I echo, is that we want to make sure that the public feels that we are doing our due diligence and being thorough. And I do, part of me, I kind of concur with Mr. Smith on South Carolina, but I also sort of feel like South Carolina, is its own thing, and we need to uphold that system. And we're elected in South Carolina. I want to make sure, Mr. Smith, that we are being thorough and also being fair. So I think it warrants further discussion. So, Ms. Gordon, did you have anything you wanted to add at this point?
I just wanted to, well, Dr. Rodriguez, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Rodriguez actually hit on what I was going to say. The teacher evaluation instrument really doesn't have anything to do with how we evaluate Dr. Rodriguez. It's a different system of evaluating your teachers and evaluating Dr. Rodriguez. For instance, with the closing of the gap, that's strictly within the classrooms and for the teachers to do that. And I find it difficult for me to hold Dr. Rodriguez accountable for, over 1,000 teachers, whether or not they close the gap or not. He can get the information out, but really that goes with the teachers and the principals. So I do think we need to look at the wording of how we're going to fairly evaluate our superintendent when it comes to closing the gap and that kind of thing, and student achievement. And we want to keep it high, we want to keep it fair, but we also have to make sure it's attainable. So when you're talking about closing the gap, are you talking about 50%, 15%, 10%, or pray for 2%? Because that is definitely an area, I think, not just within South Carolina, but within a lot of districts about how we're going to close the gap. So I want to make it measurable. I want to make it fair. But I just want to make sure that we all understand that when you're looking at how you evaluate this, how we evaluate our superintendent, that we're looking at what he is solely can be responsible for and held accountable for.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. I think we're very fortunate to have someone with your experience in the school system too, because I don't have that. So that is really helpful. And I know Mr. Smith also has worked within the school system. What I feel like is, and this is the discussion I want to have, and I think we probably need to bring it to the board, and I think we should have maybe some examples of other South Carolina superintendent evaluation instruments and possibly look at, how teachers and principals are evaluated. But for me personally, I feel like if you're evaluating the head of a system, you can't get so very granular, like you said, on, if you've got 1,000 teachers, how do you assess gap closure, right? Right. I think it's really more looking at what are we doing at a high level, what programs are we putting in place, what, school culture is, that kind of thing. So, and that's a little bit trickier. So maybe, and I don't know, Mr. Smith, if your hand's still up or
I'll put it back up.
I wanted to add something.
You're muted.
Oh yes, no, my hand is still up.
Okay.
What I was going to say was that, yeah, I do understand what Mrs. Gordon is saying, but however, regardless, if the school is not doing good, then you didn't.
Oh shoot, Mr. Smith, I tell you what, I'm going to invest in a cell phone tower nearby wherever you are, because we have this all the time. I'm sorry, we're losing you. We got the electronics.
My bad. I hit mute. My bad. I apologize.
Okay.
My bad. Yeah. No, I was gonna say that. No, I do understand what Mrs. Gordon is saying. But however, I do notice that when we have schools and the school is not doing good, then 9 times out of 10, we change the administrator. And so with that being said, the administrator job is to effectively change the outcome of the school and the growth of it. And I do believe student performance is in that. So
Yeah.
with that being said, an administrator is basically a lineage of the superintendent. So with that being said, student achievement must be a part of the superintendent's evaluation process, and also must be a huge part of the superintendent's responsibilities, because that all depends on growth. Because either the district's going to get better, or the achievement gap is going to get worse. And worse becomes the crime that we're seeing right now in Beaufort County. So, so at some point in time, I do believe that the achievement gap must be one of the most important things in terms of moving forward. Because if we're not focused on the achievement gap, then what are we really here? To some degree, why are we really here? That's my point on that.
Ms. Boatwright, I'm sorry. Can I say something? I can't
Please.
find my little hand thing. Just to be clear, thank you, Ms. Boatwright. And I think Dr. Rodriguez will agree. I'm not talking about the achievement gap. When you look at gap closure, you're also looking at SPED. You have to include that. You have to include the gap between African American students and non-white. You have to look at African American boys, girls. There's a lot that encompass that gap closure within our schools and within our system. And that's why I'm saying when we put this here, we really have to be careful in our writing and explanation of what we're expecting from the superintendent. Because just to say a gap closure, that's a broad statement. An achievement gap, I think was a couple of years ago, Bart River had like a 10, 12 point jump in their achievement gap. And I think we went ballistic. It was awesome. So we have to understand what the gap closure means and what the achievement means, so that we can give our superintendent the direction that he needs, which is why I'm happy that Ms. Boatwright called this meeting, because she's looking for directions from the board about what this should say. So that's a broad statement, Mr. Will, and I appreciate what you said. I take that into consideration, but you have to look at, it's more just putting the word achievement there, and gap closure is different from achievement. Thank you.
Okay, and I think basically, if you guys will go with me on Mr. Smith, did you put your hand back up? No, okay.
No, I apologize. I apologize.
No worries. I just want to make sure I'm getting everybody in. And Mr. Campbell and I, and Mr. Smith as well, having been, I think, and I think Mr. Smith, you missed this part earlier. What we do seem to be agreeing to bring to the board is that we remove the pandemic response, right? And we adjust the financial thing, because we definitely had that very conversation at the last evaluation. And then I think there has been ongoing discussion, especially with the pandemic and especially with the fact that we don't have the same metric format as Michigan, coming up with a way to rigorously evaluate our superintendent in a fair way. So that is the discussion probably that we need to have with the board in terms of this academic piece. What is there a better way to do it than what we have now? Is there a fair, and I think in some ways, even though it can actually become more rigorous as part of this discussion. So that's what I'm thinking we're getting out of this. Chloe or Ms. Gordon or Mr. Campbell or Mr. Smith, if you disagree with me, speak up, because that's kind of what I'm thinking I'm going to take to the board, is get rid of the pandemics response section, adjust the financial, and let's have a discussion about if there's a way to do the academic piece better so that we have a rigorous but fair assessment of the superintendent.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Campbell.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. then that is all I really needed. Dr. Rodriguez, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay.
No, I don't. Not about this. You got other stuff, hurricanes and all kinds of other stuff going on, but
No kidding.
this, no.
Okay. Well, this seems
Ingrid?
pretty doable. Yeah.
I have a question. So what
Sure.
you're going to take to the board, are you also going to adjust the percentages in your recommendation to the board since you're removing the pandemic?
No, because that was just each section still weighted the same, right?
So the finance would not be
What's finance weighted at now?
50. Okay. So I said, yes, it's weighted at 15. You'll
Yeah,
just,
so we'll
you'll
adjust
just
that.
be adjusting this side. Got it.
So that in the event that we come in on budget, we can give them a 4.0.
Got it. This moves
So
over
yeah.
to here. We just moved this over to 4 so that it can be a 4.0. Got it.
And that was something that was discussed at the last evaluation.
It was.
And then we will have a discussion about the fairest and most effective way to capture student achievement, but we'll leave the student achievement place at 25%.
I agree. Yeah.
And if the board wants to give us some direction, I'm just, as you know, Robin, I'm a little frustrated because I feel like we need this committee's needed a little more guidance from the board as to what the expectations are. The other thing I'm going to bring out, Ms. Gordon, with your permission, is that we still need to have a discussion. I just don't think we can continue without a strategic results section.
And you have to put into place, because school has started, what
I
your
know.
guidelines are for 23-24.
Correct. And that will definitely come out of this discussion, I think, as well. But again, yeah, I'm going to make the push to look at the results section. And really, in my opinion, this is the discussion I want to have with the board. The OEs should be a much bigger factor than they are in the evaluation, because that's what we're asking him to adhere to. So, but we'll get some guidance from the board. Those are the 3 concrete things, I think: getting rid of the pandemic response, adjusting that one financial metric. And these are all things that I think it's fair to do because we've had these discussions in board meetings and in committee meetings, and then seeing if there is a better way to do the academic evaluation. Everybody, I don't think we need a motion. I'll just do that as part of my report.
Okay.
Everybody good with that?
I am.
Okay. All right, 30 minutes. That's awesome.
Cool.
Thank you all so much. And to Mr. Campbell and Mr. Smith, I really appreciate you guys coming to this meeting and having some input. And Ms. Gordon, thank you for making the time.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay,
See you guys
thank
on
you.
the 5th.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.